Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic, and welcome to today's Beyond the Vault weekly update. With me, of course, is the one and only Andy Scheckman. You can find his work at milesfranklin.com, as well as on his YouTube channel at Miles Franklin Media. Andy, welcome back to the show. Happy New Year, man. How are you?
Great to see you. You know, they always say you never really know how much you miss something until you step away for a little while. But it's really nice to be back here with you, JC. I want to wish you and your family and everyone out there a very happy, healthy New Year. But it's good to be back, man. Thanks for having me.
Good to be back. Good to have you back. You look very healthy and tanned. if I could say.
Benefits of Florida for sure.
Andy, thank you so much for being here today and spending a little bit of time. I'm going to recap all the craziness we've seen in the last couple of months. You and I haven't done a show in a while, but in earnest here, December seems to be very spectacular in terms of what's happening in the gold and silver market. We're going to try to break that down for the audience members here today. A couple of things, Andy, I want to have your take on. From what I understand, one of the biggest news this year was China announcing that they would, on January 1st, close basically the exports on precious metals, including silver, as of January 1st, kind of putting everybody on notice. This, of course, was not very published by mainstream news, so it was kind of difficult to start connecting the dots. But as you so well said at the conference in March of 2024, you had said that banks were accumulating gold at a rapid clip like never before, and you were seeing big influx coming into the United States as well. Something was happening behind the scenes. You shared with the audience members your thesis at that point. So I want to start there, Andy, and say and ask you, what specifically in the last maybe 4 or 5 months have either confirmed your thesis, added to your thesis, or perhaps detracted to some extent part of your thesis here on what's happening in the gold and silver market? Let me give you the mic here for the next 5 minutes to share with the audience members what you've seen in the last couple of months that really is setting the stage here for 2026.
Yeah, and so thank you, JC. I mean, what I've seen has completely increased my opinion, and I think I was right on a lot of what I said to you. You know, yes, China certainly did enact effective January 1 export restrictions, whereby everything that is exported out of the country must be permitted first through Beijing, and the number of state approved is the key here. Refineries have been whittled way down from where they used to be. They have to meet a stringent criteria that most of them can't meet, and the state doesn't want to let this go the way that the other companies may have. Because what the media missed, or even a lot of the people on this side of the media spectrum, the YouTubers and whatnot, missed, was that in November they made Silver made a list of what they called supervised commodities effective November 1, and supervised commodities were to prioritize domestic needs. But everyone caught the fact that they said we are going to limit exports. No one caught the fact that the European Union in 2023 at the very end named silver to the critical raw materials list. It was called the Critical Raw Materials Act of 2023. So that's where it started. 2023, the European Union says, well, it is critical raw material. The United States a month ago said silver is now a critical mineral, and now China says we are going to limit exports. We have seen tremendous amounts of gold and silver that has been delivered into the COMEX over the last several months. Let me see if I can give you the exact numbers, because they're absolutely crazy. And I think that, I was talking about that at your show a year ago, and now we're seeing it truly blow off the charts. And to me, that's all you really need to know, is that the biggest money in the world is standing for delivery. So I'm going to give you the December numbers and the January numbers, but these are the numbers that we've been seeing now. Let me get down here for a very long time. it's not ending. Just a second, which will certainly explain what I'm talking about. We can go a little bit deeper, of course. Sorry about that. It's getting close here. But yes, what we are seeing is a continuation not only of the central banks buying the hell out of it, but we are seeing an awful lot, and we can talk about, all of this stuff, like why the price fell and all of that kind of stuff, and why it will go right back up. Here are the deliveries. Okay, so let's start with December for silver. The December, now I've been telling everyone for a year that the ruse that was tariff threats was just a ruse. It was to reshore, and I'm screaming for a year. This isn't about tariffs and arbitrage. This is the United States reshoring its gold and silver, calling it a critical mineral. And I've told you, several times that Judy Shelton on my show said gold is going to back the back end of the treasury market, which I still believe will happen. But in the month of December, 62,875,000 ounces of silver stood for delivery. That's a record all-time high for the month of December, but this is what we've seen for 13 straight months. If 500 ounces of silver weighs 42 pounds, who's taken possession of 62,875,000 ounces? If we take a look at what's happened here in the first couple of days. Now, I didn't look yesterday or the day before, but 3 days of the January delivery contract, we saw 4,249 contracts of gold delivered at 100 ounces apiece. That's 424,900 ounces of gold in the first 3 days delivered, and 3,596 silver contracts at 5,000 ounces each issued and stopped, meaning it was delivered into the exchange. Some of it leaves, some of it goes into the eligible category, which means it's not for sale, registered as for sale. It's just held in the vault until further notice. That's 17,980,000 ounces of silver in 3 days. Just the first 3 days, 18 million ounces of silver. Remember, I said in December, it was, what did I say in December? It was 62,875,000. So in the month of December, plus the first 3 days of January, you're talking almost 90 million ounces of silver delivered. So not to mention, you had 3.76 million ounces of gold delivered in December. Well, 3.7 million times what? 4,300? Do the math. These numbers are into the billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions every single frickin' month for the last 13 months. And where is the mainstream media? Where are they? Not talking about any of this. Do they tell the world that silver was reclassified a critical mineral? Hell no. Do they tell the United States, any of the people watching, that we're seeing the biggest and most well-informed money? Look, when you're spending billions of dollars, you don't do it for shits and giggles, right? You know where things are going. And the people who have that kind of bread, they don't get there just for the hell of it. They get there because they know the insiders. They're all connected at that level. They know the information. And when you see billion upon billion upon billion upon billion upon billion upon billion, count 13 times, delivered into COMEX, and not a damn word by the mainstream, it makes it very easy for me to understand what is happening. It's classic misdirection.
Right. It's just a pet rock, Andy.
That's right.
Why should we talk about this? Hey, listen, a couple of events that I saw also on the radar. I want to have your take on it too. So one, the reclassification of silver. 2, the export ban here starting of January 1st. 3, there's this new solid state battery that takes a lot more silver here, that is going to consume a lot more silver.
That's the Samsung battery. Yep. Samsung 1 kilo battery per battery.
Exactly. We have news also now that was interesting to me. Maybe was it a month ago or 2 months ago, where JP Morgan had announced that they were now net long silver, which indicated a change of strategy at that point that people noticed. But recently, in the last couple of days, JP Morgan made the news again, to where now they're financing a deal with the Pentagon at the tune of 7.2 or $7.9 billion to create this new refinery here in the United States for precious metals.
And
The world
who
has
else is
changed.
on that too? The Department of Defense.
Right.
And what have I said to the public forever? And people gave me all sorts of shit about that. No. Oh yeah, silver is used in copious quantities for the military-industrial complex. And I want to focus on something you just said. And yes, the reason they're doing that, Jean-Claude, is that China not only refines 70% of the world's doré, which is the unrefined silver. Switzerland refines the majority of the more refined silver, turns it into high-quality bars. But they also refine 90+% of the rare earths. This $7 billion smelter is not just for silver and gold, it's for rare earths also. You cannot be reliant on the rest of the world to do all of these things for you, and that's what they're doing. But in terms of silver, that's exactly what they're doing. They're building something to make sure that the United States government has enough silver to run their high-tech military agenda. And, this is why you have seen now, to your point about JP Morgan being net long, it was the Economic Times who said JP Morgan and, in essence, the U.S. banks are now net long, that JP flipped a 200 million ounce short position that bought 21 million ounces of physical in 6 weeks and is now effectively net long. The question I have been saying to everyone that, again, think big picture here. You have to stop thinking in terms of within the lines. And I'm going to show you that with Venezuela also. But what I'm saying is that the article said that the big five U.S. banks are net long. Well, that would imply that the other 3 or 4, there are 8 or 9 big banks that have held the largest concentrated short position of any commodity ever traded in the history of the COMEX market. Let me say that again. The largest concentrated, meaning 8 or 9 banks, short position of any of the 1,000 commodities ever traded on COMEX in silver. All Western banks, 5 in the U.S., 1 in Canada, maybe 2 or 3 in Europe. Why? Because the West and its military-industrial complex, not just the United States, Great Britain, France, Italy, Spain, they all have powerful militaries and high-tech weaponry. And the U.S. and NATO sells the weapons to the NATO allies, the military-industrial complex does. Who are they? That's BlackRock. They own all of the weapons manufacturers. They're also the custodian of SLV and GLD along with JP Morgan, the bank that paid $920 million to the Justice Department. But ask yourself, why would 8 banks hold the largest concentrated short position in any of the 1,000 commodities traded in silver? Because they needed to keep it cheap. It's not even about keeping it cheap because there's only a few hundred ounces in a missile. So what? A missile's $20 million or $12 million or whatever the number is. Who cares? There's a tiny bit of silver in your iPhone. Who cares if the silver price goes to 200? They still need it. So the iPhone goes up by 200. If there's a fifth of an ounce, that goes up by $20, $30. Who cares? It's called inelastic. The military-industrial complex had to step on the price of silver so the world wouldn't understand how scarce it was and how vital it was, and they wanted to keep it cheap and counterintuitive, detached from gold, because they need it to make high-tech weapons. But they've been exposed by the countries that are standing for delivery, and they're doing that in London and even in Shanghai and in here on the COMEX. This is why it's changing. You see, for my entire career, no one stood for delivery, less than 1% of the contracts. Now they're all standing for delivery. I don't want your paper, Jean-Claude. I want the real metal. Thank you very much. Ship it over. But, well, that's what's happening. The London Metals Exchange is a T+1 settlement market. T is trade day plus 1. On the 3rd day, you should get your bars. They're T+8 weeks all year long last year. Why? Because evidently there's a shortage of manpower and trucks that the Bank of England is telling us through the LBMA. Sorry, I know you need your bars because you run a multinational jewelry manufacturing business, but it can be 8 weeks instead of the 3 days that we normally would tell you. So the point is they're getting caught, and it's happening right as we speak, as all of these entities are standing for delivery. The difference between everything we've ever seen. Now, I started talking about all of these countries not only repatriating their gold and silver from the Bank of England and the New York Fed in 2020, and the reason they kept it there was to give access to the COMEX and the LBMA, the two Western centers of trade, London Metals Exchange and the COMEX. But now what you're seeing is something far different in the respect that the United States is getting on board with this. And they say, well, we need to reshort because of tariffs. Don't worry, it'll all come back. No, it ain't going back. They are reshoring it, and they are adding it as a critical mineral. And they are, I believe, who we've become the largest importer of gold in the world. They're going to tie it to the back end of the bond market. Gold is being integrated into the global monetary system. Silver is now a critical mineral in the United States. In the European Union, it is a mineral that will be used for national security and national domestic priority in China. Therefore, we are restricting exports. Well, the rumor is, and I don't know if it's true or not, that the Swiss refineries have now shut down for a period of 2 to 3 weeks for permitting. They have to have their permitting export licenses reviewed, because much of the silver that was refined from Doré in China that would export to Switzerland to be refined into Western denominated bars or sized bars. China makes bars that the West doesn't buy. So they would melt those down and re-hallmark them through the Swiss refineries, Pamp and Valcambi and Melor and Argo Herreras. Now they aren't, because of this export ban. They've had to reassess the situation. It's going to expand vastly.
You just mentioned, is that a rumor or is that confirmed? Because I've been trying to decipher this in the last couple of days.
It's as far as I know, it's an unconfirmed rumor. Okay. This AI guy who everyone's talking about.
Let me get into that. Let me get into that.
A lot of what he says is legit. Yeah. I found a lot of what he says to be flawed.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's a very interesting. I've never seen a channel blow up so fast, and he has like 12 different channels or more. But it's almost like someone on the inside in Asia is saying a lot of the stuff I've been trying to tell your people about for the last 4 years. He's trying to tell the whole public, and I can't tell if some of it's real or not. I'm not sure.
Right. So let's get into that. So from my perspective, and I've retweeted a few of these videos about a month ago when he started, and I noticed that, as you're saying here, they're distributing this across many channels. So it's not just one place of attack. If they wanted to remove him, it's all across the board. Now, there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. Some of it our audience and members have heard for a number of years, from the likes of you and Bill Holter being on the show and all that. But there's some new stuff out there where it feels like we're being treated to the behind the scenes, behind the curtain, play by play, almost by the minute. We've never really had that before. So there is some inside information being shared. A lot of it is actionable, but like you, I found a couple of things like, wait, that's wrong. Wait, that's wrong. The date here is wrong. So I did kind of caution our audience members. Nevertheless, there's still a lot of valuable information here as to the why, the structural deficits, who's buying, why they're standing for delivery, for people to understand what's happening right now, the shakedowns. As we just saw the other day, Bank of America just put out this new advisory to their clients saying that silver is probably going to go between $139 and maybe $300. That created the liquidity for the smackdown we just saw here today. Somebody was exiting positions today. So he was kind of at least warning people that was still in place. So he's doing good, but again, like, don't bet your whole house here on what Asian guy is saying. And my other preoccupation, I want to ask you this too. Is it possible that there's enough good in here to create this network effect of individuals who are listening to this information to maybe at the last minute pointing towards the wrong direction, and people might get slaughtered by this too? I'm just worried of what's happening in the background with this particular community that this AI distributed thing is creating right now. I have preoccupations with that. What say you about that? Is there more good and bad? Are you 50-50? Do you still put up the warning flag here? Where are you on this end?
I think there's more good than bad, to be honest with you. I mean, some of the things that he said aren't true, like every dealer has to use a Form 8300, anything over $10,000. That's not true. He talked about an executive order that was written that where metals could be confiscated. It was in a new law. Well, the law, you Google the law, and it was like the Advanced Education Act, and there is no law like that. There is. So some of the things he's saying isn't true. It's almost like, because I know he's quoted some of the things I've said. He quoted Bill Holter. He got into a fight with the economic ninja. It's almost like someone very powerful has found a way to. The economic ninja said he's full of shit, and he comes back and says, no, the ninja's full of shit. Well, he's listening. It's almost like they're listening to all of the channels. They're taking everything and putting it together and then reporting it through the Asian guys.
PSYOP. Like I'm at the page at this point that it's a huge PSYOP, but there's a way to use this for an advantage. That's how I'm seeing it. But at the same time, I think the PSYOP is coming more from China than it is from the white hats or here in the
I
West.
agree. This seems to be coming from China, and it's
Right.
almost like they're trying to wake up the West to push
Right.
the price much higher, to devalue, to have everyone exit, crash the markets, and go into physical. I mean, that's what it seems like.
Right. Everything happening again here as the export ban took effect on January 1st. So
Right.
all these forces are colliding at the same time. And all at the same time, just by happenstance, there's this mass distribution AI of information, like I said, blow by blow by blow. And sometimes almost a day in advance. Have you noticed that too? Or
Yes.
2 days in advance of events, he's reporting on events. I'm like, wait, that's not happening yet. We're 2 days apart. So there's something weird happening there. I'm not sure what to read in on it. So if it is from the West, I mean, or the East, what's the advantage for the audience members? If you, as you say, there's more good than bad, how do we navigate all this? Because again, here we're getting to see behind the scenes, blow by blow on a daily basis on how and why traders are doing what they're doing, why the bots are doing what they're doing, why like really the mechanics of it to a degree that we have never seen before reported almost in real life time. How do the audience members navigate that right now? Still also understand that there's risk here, not talking about silver itself and some of the fundamentals, but the risk in terms of being manipulated maybe just before the finish line here to maybe use a financial act that is not in your best interest. That's what I'm worried about, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I understand why it's easy to be cynical on things. Maybe it's just not a psyop. Also, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It almost seems like it's more geared towards waking people up to crush the short positions. Perhaps maybe there are some people out there that are trying to blow up this once and for all, the manipulation of the Western metals market, which has controlled the price erroneously for a very long time. Gold, because of something called Gibson's paradox, where they suppress gold along with suppressing interest rates, because that's the illusion of prosperity is when you have really low interest rates manipulated down, people go deeper into debt and spend more money and expand and throw caution to the wind. You buy the Escalade instead of the Tahoe, because it's 72 months, 0% interest rate. And what's your house worth at a 3% mortgage versus a 10? So you have to step on gold and silver because the military industrial complex, and maybe the Chinese have been buying so much of this stuff, understand it, that they now want to wake up the West to what's really happening. So you get this flood of institutional and retail investing that really does overwhelm the West, the ability of the West to continue to hold the price down right at the time when they've accumulated more than anyone, they produce more than anyone, and now they're restricting exports. I don't know.
Looking at this also, Andy, just from a practical point of view. I know what it is to do 23 shows a week. We do that on God Mystic on a daily basis, but I have a team of people. I could not possibly do as many shows as this guy's doing and also sleep and have a family and hold a job. So that's why I'm saying it's a psyop. There has to be like a whole team behind all of this. There's just too much information coming too quickly to be just one guy doing reporting and doing these videos on a daily basis. There has to be more to it. And even if I used AI to create some of my content, I still need to be there to tell AI what I wanted to talk about. And I still have to develop the content and, give some backlinks and information. It's still very time consuming. So I think there's a lot of effort being put behind this particular initiative. And again, like you, I also believe there's more good than bad, but just for the audience members to be perfectly honest and responsible, buyer beware still. Like if you see the tone change all of a sudden where something doesn't make sense to you, doesn't feel good to you, like use your own intuition. And also like don't just follow this one source. Keep broadening your radar and listen to more sources like
Totally.
Holter and all that. So I think that's good advice. Now, there's two things that's weird here. In December, as we saw the price, the cup and handle break, and all these things, and getting up to $60, $70, $82. Again, like you said, mainstream news, not a peep. Like, not even talking about it. It's like it doesn't exist. Yet we're sitting here saying, holy shit, there's dead men walking here at this price. A lot of shorts right now, in a lot of trouble. We've seen the repo market open its window, injecting billions of dollars again here in the last couple of weeks. Something's wrong in the back end, yet we're not hearing it from official sources. There was one comment by Elon Musk. He said, this is not good. So at least he kind of chimed in. And I thought he chimed in probably after he secured the silver he needed from whatever mine for next year's production line. But he didn't comment before being able to secure it. That's my point of view. Trump, on his point of view, I'll get your point on that in a second. He is also not talking about it. But here for New Year's Eve, of course, Melania Trump comes out with the silver dress to the song.
Yeah, I saw Big sent that out. There's meaning behind everything.
Dude, so he's kind of telling you, okay, hi-ho silver, there's something there. So that's a semaphore. It's a calm. It's a veiled calm for Mr. Trump, but no official statement from him other than the $7.2 billion investment now in the refineries in the States, which we can presume is a big indication signal as to where things are going right now. But let me ask you about Elon Musk on all of this. Tesla, the battery cars and all that. Where do you think he is on this right now? Because we're hearing reports that there was, I think, 50 million contracts that were canceled or neglected on January 1st coming out of China. And now people are realizing that they're trying to source for the production lines and they can't from China anymore unless they have these special exemptions as you talked about. So now they're trying to resource that. They're looking at the COMEX. The float is pretty low. They're looking at the LBMA. The float's pretty low. So we're seeing a transition in industry to where perhaps in the past 10 or 20 years, they were happy to rely on the just-in-time delivery for their silver and for whatever production line they were involved in. But now they might be changing their focus to, well, we need to source the metal ourselves. We need to store the metals ourselves. And perhaps we need our own mines. Is that what Tesla and other companies are doing right now that is also aggravating the pressure on the price here, Andy?
Samsung went directly to the mines in Mexico and opened up a closed mine and gets all of their silver doré concentrate for the next 2 years. China's been doing that for the last several years, and I've reported that on your show. My friend Sean Kuhn, who is the CEO of Dolly Varden Silver, said 2 years ago, Andy, China's coming. Now remember, China's number 2, Mexico's number 1, China 2, Peru number 3. He said in silver production globally, he said, Andy, China, as the number 2 producer in the world, and some people say number 1, is flying directly to Peru and to Mexico, in particular, Peru and Mexico, other countries in Latin America, but in particular, those two. They built a deep water port in Peru, kind of integrating it into the Belt Road. But they flew in there and they're buying all the doré and the concentrate right from the miners, disintermediating the marketplace. And doré is a crudely refined bar that the miners make, and before they send it into China or wherever else they would send it for full purification, refining to 999. Maybe it's 40 or 50 or 60 or 70% pure, but it's got other stuff in it, and they send it in for refining. The concentrate is a byproduct sludge of this process, where it's like a tar they can pull the silver and gold out of. But they're buying all that directly from Peru and from Mexico, from their miners, in a pre-production, pre-refining form long before it's even called silver or gold. Shipping it back to the West, paying double what the West while shipping it back to China and refining it themselves. Well, Samsung just did the same thing, flew to Mexico and struck a deal with the mine. When I was talking to Keith Neumeyer last year over dinner, hang on one second, on a podcast. Of course, I get from my operations, need you to call me immediately. So Keith Neumeyer, the CEO of First Majestic said for the very first time he saw auto manufacturers coming to the shows he was speaking at, where they're going, again, right to the miners, disintermediating the marketplace. But going back to what I said earlier, who took possession of 62,875,000 ounces of silver in December? And who took possession of over 18 million ounces in the first 3 days of January? Is it Tesla? Is it Samsung? Is it Sony? Is it these companies that are, doing this stuff?
Is it the Pentagon for the Department of War? Okay, so you just mentioned now these countries that are going to Latin America are going directly to mines. Is that what just happened here, Andy? Because here, as soon as we heard the news about Maduro being captured, we had all these social engineers on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube doing videos saying this is about the 2020 election. It's about the Dominion machines. 2020 is not over. I'm like, okay, yes, maybe there is part of that, but there's a bigger story behind all of this. What say you in terms of strategic positioning here for resource management in Venezuela and this move from the United States?
Well, I mean, maybe it's about the oil. I'm going to broaden your perspective. Hang on one second. Let me just see. What the hell? Who is that?
If you have an emergency, Andy, we can. We're 30 minutes in. We can go if you have to go. And we, of course, hey guys, just so you know, Andy and I are going to be back now every week, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern for these shows. So stay tuned. More development coming up here in 2026. What say you, Andy? Do you have to go?
No. What the hell? He told me much more. So hang on one second. I don't have to go. I just need to send this to him real quick.
Okay. Guys, while Andy is working on that, don't forget tonight, Beyond Crystal Code with Carla. That's today, actually, at 3 p.m. Eastern. And Janine and I are going to be back this evening, of course, at 8 o'clock Eastern for the Beyond the News. This is the pay-per-view edition. If you guys are on IAP as well, we might have some special launch products for you guys as well here tonight. I know Coco and Aline are working on that in the background, so stay tuned for that episode. Make sure to log into your Discord channel later this evening here to be part of that. Tomorrow, of course, Janine's back from holidays. Beyond Ravens is going to be on the Quick Draw Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And Jenny and I are going to be back, of course, on the Wednesday night, as well as the Thursday here for the viewer questions and much, much more. And finally, last but not least, if you haven't seen the show we did with Astrid on Sunday night, she is back on the show here as well on a weekly basis now with Beyond Astrid. This is the weekly astro forecast Tuesdays at noon Eastern here moving forward. And last but not least, I told you there was a lot going on in 26. We also have Elena coming back to the show here, restarting the Beyond Harmony franchise here on Friday for the weekly meditations. You don't want to miss that. That's going to be this Friday here, January 9th at noon Eastern. All right, Andy, what say you?
I had two brothers, and the two brothers, one of them locked in a big order, and my operations thought it was the one brother. The one brother said, "What are you talking about?" The other brother said, "It's me." Okay. So what were we saying? I'm sorry.
We were talking about Venezuela resource.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes. You were talking about oil also here.
Yeah. So first of all, I can understand to a degree. First of all, I hate being the world's policeman. I do. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of Venezuelan valet drivers who I love, become good buddies with at my country club, and I BS with them all the time, and they're happy as pig in mud that this happened. And from a standpoint of who he was as a narco guy and a dictator, and okay, great, I love it, but it's not up to us to do that. I get it, but we did it. So they said, well, you stole oil from the United States. Well, they didn't really steal oil from us, but they did break the deal. We built their infrastructure. The oil companies of the West built the infrastructure. There was a deal in place. He takes over, the deal gets squashed. So I get it, but I want to open your eyes just a little bit differently, because I think in politics and in warfare, maybe there's one of the things that's given me notoriety in this industry, Jean-Claude, is either I'm stupid enough to say it or I'm courageous enough to say it. And that is that I put things together. I look for a bigger meaning in things. And fortunately, I've been relatively successful in doing that over the last several years, talking about the BRICS, and a lot of things that I've said have come true because I've been able to put them together. So here's a bigger, expansive view. Think of Gaddafi. Think of Hussein. Both wanted to sell their oil, one for euro, one for the golden dinar they wanted to build with the other countries, and were swiftly removed. So first of all, we have the largest known supply of oil in ground in the world, 2 billion barrels in Venezuela, who has openly applied to the BRICS and who is selling their oil to China for yuan. Doesn't like that. Then you have Nigeria at the same time that supposedly now we're protecting the Christians who have been persecuted. Now, that's a very good thing. I'm glad, but it's been going on for a long time. The Christians were being butchered and persecuted in Nigeria for a long time now, a couple of years. Why now all of a sudden the interest? Oh, aren't they the largest producer of oil in Africa? And have they not just applied officially to the BRICS? I do believe they have. So could it be this is his way of saying to the BRICS, don't mess with the United States, maybe, that we're still the petrodollar? Now, you don't see him doing that to China. You don't see him doing that to India or to Russia. I mean, maybe what we see in the Ukraine is a little bit of that as well, but not.
Will he do it to Canada? A lot of people are saying we're probably next on the list, but let me go down the line where you're going here too. Is it possibly to provide? I was listening to another podcast last week suggesting that everybody around the planet right now, the rulers, the powers that be, are trying for this softer landing, that they've basically given up. They know that the change is upon them. The suppression of metals is over, or all but over, and there's a big financial change coming up. Could it be that this move in Venezuela for the oil is partly, again, just to add a little bit more runway, a little bit more buffer to the petrodollar here as Trump introduces this new Genius Act, gets into the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, and maybe, as Judy Sheldon was saying, a gold-backed currency? Could it be just that as well? Or was it also a plan to attack Canada here because Canada was using their oil as one of their main negotiating points with Trump here during the tariffs? And now it's kind of a moot point for Canada here. So again, more economic pressure.
Yeah, but Canada wasn't selling their oil for other currencies. That's what pissed them off. And, you know, Nigeria and Venezuela are selling it to China for yuan. And if they're part of the Belt Road and part of the BRICS, it will be over the Enbridge network, which is now operational.
Right.
You talk about the Genius Act. Yeah, that goes into effect January 1 of next year, if not sooner. These things are all happening very quickly, and I think there's a lot more to meets the eye in all of this stuff. I don't think we're going there to pillage their silver and their natural resources. And as far as I can tell, we're not talking regime change. There is another video going around regarding
hold on just a second on that one here, too. I'm confused by one of the statements by Trump, because he said, we're going to be running the country of Venezuela. He went as far as to say that the replacement for Maduro, one of the political counterparts, didn't have the respect of the people yet. So he kind of like put that person aside and said, no, we're going to be here for a little while. What do you make of that?
Well, that's probably the vice president of the country, the lady who's saying that she thinks he should come back.
Right.
So I think what they're trying to do is get rid of the narco state altogether and maybe bring in the person who was supposedly duly elected but is now out of the country somewhere.
Right.
I don't know exactly. I don't know that we'll be running it, but look, Argentina was admitted and accepted invitation to the BRICS, and then you could say somehow Milei got in, and as a friend of the West, who said, no, I'm out now, we're out of BRICS. So they may not be running it, but they might be running it, so to speak. It's like the Monroe Doctrine. They're coming in and saying, no, if it's in the Americas, the United States has first dibs on this stuff. Right. But it just adds more to, to the tenuous relationship between the East and the West, and I don't think it'll get better.
Can we also add to that, Andy, just to close that loop, and I want to move to the next segment, Trump last year was also talking about Greenland and also acquiring Canada through economic force. Is this part of that same plan? Are we seeing him now execute some of the things that he was talking about last year? And do you see a bigger picture here for North America moving forward? Again, in the context of perhaps competing with the BRICS nations here now, whether from an economic standpoint or maybe a military standpoint, is Trump moving on that North American economic / defense zone here, perhaps in an accelerated fashion here with Venezuela? And he says Cuba is next also, Andy.
Yeah, he said Venezuela and Cuba again because of their politicians, I suppose, and or he mentioned Colombia as well, and he said that the president of Colombia, he's a bad guy. He likes to create cocaine and sell it to the world. He's using this narco thing. I don't think he'll come after Canada quite that way. Greenland, I could see it, not militarily, but I could see him moving because of the natural resources and because of the strategic location in terms of, military and whatnot. But I don't know. It certainly feels like he's doing these things, and you can say what you want about President Trump. He's kind of buffoonish in the way he speaks, but he certainly seems to be prioritizing America's interests in the region far more than the previous administration did, and for that I'm happy. But he's not creating, he's creating as many enemies as he is friends at the same time. So
right.
Don't know what the right answer is. But I did see a video, and I couldn't confirm it. It was more mainstream that Mark Carney is trying to take back home all of the money that TD Bank and RBC uses or is injected into the repo market, into the overnight market, which could really quickly screw up the markets here. He's kind of using a little bit of, he's telling the banks in Canada, bring your money back home, get it out of the U.S. Now, I can't confirm that, but you start doing that, and I could see Trump getting a little angry. Have you heard anything about what I just mentioned?
Same as you. That's all I know. So whether it's confirmed or not, I'm not sure. But Carney's been doing this tit for tat with Trump here all year, pissing off Trump more often than not. So it could be that he's still in the same strategies. We might have an election this spring also here. The Liberals think that they can win now with the majority. But if they're going to go in an election, they need that, boogeyman, the counterpart, which is Trump, Orange Man Bad, for their campaign slogan. So they might just be setting that up as well. And it's just more saber rattling. I don't know. Going back to China for just a moment, also, Andy, we're getting rumors that they've printed trillions of dollars injected into the M2 money supply, and a big portion of that is going into precious metals, other commodities as well, but they're basically printing money and getting real assets here. Does that force the hand of the Federal Reserve here also to stop the tightening and go back to what we've seen perhaps in 2008, but times 10 or times 100? Are we at that point where we get that helicopter money from the Fed, Andy? What say you?
Yeah, they injected a record amount into the overnight repo market recently because the banks don't trust each other's collateral, largely mortgage-backed securities, and that is a form of huge monetary intervention and throwing money into the system. The system is close to locking up. It's not a liquidity problem, it's a trust problem. They have already said openly that they're going to purchase somewhere around $40 billion a month in treasuries and stop tightening. Again, you get to a point in an economy where it is so reliant upon consumption and spending, and if the economy slows down, then you have the whole thing contracts upon itself and implodes. So yeah, I think we will see this new form of quantitative easing, even though they won't call it that. They stop tightening, and they're going to buy 40 billion in treasuries a month. And now they're putting money into the overnight repo market. Absolutely. What you will see is that, look, if you save in dollars, you're destined to go broke. That's the bottom line. And that's why you want to, gold and silver to me are not investments, Jean-Claude. Investments would be mining shares for mining companies or cryptocurrencies or whatever. Stocks, to me, what gold and silver are is wealth that has outlived, as I've said on your show a million times, 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, and now the most well-informed traders in the globe. the central banks, the commercial banks, and now the Wall Street traders are gobbling it up and standing for delivery. It's wealth. And I would rather hold my money in an asset that is appreciating against the declining currencies rather than holding it in dollars, which is losing value every day. Now, they tell us that the dollar only was down 10% last year against the Dixie, the dollar index, which is a stupid measurement. Triffin's dilemma, which is an economic theory, says that as the reserve currency, you'll always run a trade imbalance because you have to have states, or countries rather, have to sell their currency to buy our currency, to transact business, to buy oil, to do all of these things. As a result, what happens is their currencies are continuously deflating against ours.
Right.
So you're measuring the value of the dollar against a basket of deflating currencies, or debased currencies against ours. It's a very poor measuring stick. Instead, measured against gold, measured against silver.
It's the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry basket.
That's why, and that is the reason why that's true.
Yeah.
So it's artificially propped up because everyone needs it to transact global business as the reserve currency. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you save in dollars, you're dead. When you add that into the equation with all the money creation that you speak of, the quantitative easing, the ending of quantitative tightening, and absolutely saving in dollars is a very dangerous thing to do for your financial.
Well, that's what I was getting at. All of this money printing, whether it's from China or here in the States, it's all very, very bullish for precious metals. We're already seeing that in a big way. So maybe on the final segment, this B of A notice to customers there from 2 days ago, the $139 to $300 price point. Like that in context, again, you and I have talked to John Williams from Stats on the show here a number of years ago. He talked about that $600 silver from a different perspective in terms of real inflation. Cliff High, of course, has this in his about data now for the last 10 years, accruing and still accruing. If you watch his last video, he's still talking about this, and perhaps even a 1-to-1 ratio if you absolutely astronomical numbers in that point. But where are you on the B of A? Why are they saying that right now? Is that a lowball estimate? Why are they talking about the 139 to 300? And where do you see things here in the short term, perhaps the first quarter of 2026, Andy?
Well, they had the world's largest short position, or pretty damn close to it. Ted Butler, before he died, rest his soul, said they had 1 billion ounces short in the OTC market, which is the over-the-counter market, which would be London, basically. But the article in the Economic Times, which did say that the U.S. banks have, in essence, flipped, which goes into Tom Luongo's theory. Tom Luongo says that he's an interesting dude, and he says that Trump is
I've had him on the show quite a few times. I like him.
Yeah, he's smart as hell, and Trump is out to get the European aristocrats, and you would do it by blowing up the European banks. How do you do that? See, it's important to understand the mechanism. The banks in the U.S., they would short the paper price in London, here in the United States. That drives the price down on COMEX. It's the only place that does. Then they would buy a paper contract long in London, which doesn't affect the price, and it would offset their book. And these banks in concert, the Western banks, would trade back and forth what's called warrants. Without having to really move the metal, they just say, okay, now you own the warrant, which means you own it. No, now you own it. And they would go back and forth. Once in a while, some metal would move, but not a lot. But this constant back and forth between these 8 banks created all of this velocity and the appearance of a robust market, but the price was capped. And so what's interesting is then, okay, so let's say someone says to Trump 13, 14, 15 months ago, this is happening, we better bring this stuff back or we're dead. So they devise a plan with the Western banks, and they say, look, we're going to bring all this metal home. We're going to back the treasury, like Judy says. And silver is so important. If we don't have it, our military's dead, and our advanced society that is digital and electronic and AI, we're dead. So we need to bring it back. How do we do it? Well, I got an idea, says one of the bank representatives. Look, we have these short positions that are offset with long positions in New York that we just usually exchange warrants. We don't really exchange the metal. But if you tell everyone that you're going to put tariffs on bars, we can say to our banking friends, listen, you got to send the metal back. We got to cover. Don't worry. It'll all flow back. It'll all blow over. But we need the metal to cover our positions here in New York. So they all send the metal back. Tariffs, they say. No. Reshoring. And all this metal comes back. And if the article in the Economic Times is right, well, the U.S. banks you want to talk PSYOP, they went long. Well, who's short? The banks in Europe. And what does the LBMA say?
Canada still also.
Yes, and Canada. And what does the LBMA say, which is the Bank of England? Yeah, we're T plus 8 weeks. Sorry. Shortage of manpower and trucks. You're blowing up the Crown. You're blowing up some of the biggest European banks, Deutsche Bank or UBS. All it takes is one of those banks to failure to deliver. The systemic contagion of the European system, boom, just blows. Because why would you trust Standard Chartered Bank in France if they failed to deliver and blew up their metals division? Why would you trust their equity position? Why would you trust their Forex position? Why would you trust anything? We're out. And it would create a domino effect. Now, let's take one more step back. There is another rumor that the Asian guy is saying that would support all this, by the way. And then Trump says, and now we're making silver a critical mineral, y'all. After we brought all the silver home and went long. Oh, my God, they're saying now what? And China says, yeah, but we're gonna reduce exports. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? And then there's another thing the AI guy says that I can't confirm. He says, JP Morgan has told their institutional clients to exit all futures positions by January 31. Why? Yeah. Not because they don't believe in metals. He's saying take possession of it. Because at January 31, from that point on, we will no longer allow physical redemption, only paper, only money. That would be your force majeure moment at the end of January. If he gets that right, holy shit, well, then we got to pay attention to what he says, because he's saying exit. And now he says Morgan Stanley did something similar, close all your futures positions by January 31. So Morgan Stanley, whose chief investment officer just said sell half your bonds and put it into gold and silver, they're saying get out of the futures market.
Didn't he say he wanted an exposure of 20% physical metal?
Yeah,
portfolio.
Yeah. So the bond portfolio was 40. So sell half, put it. Bank of America, Michael Hartnett, their chief analyst, who has like a $12,000 a year newsletter to the institutionals, says no, put 25% in.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is if they were doing all of this, and Longo is right, and now Trump says it's critical, and then Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan say, get out by the end of January, it's not to get out because they're no longer bullish on metal. It just means that they're all connected systemically through the futures contracts. You get out, close your positions, sit on all year long. Now, what did JP Morgan do? All of this metal that they've taken, and they did something I had never heard of recently. They took 60 or 70, I have the number up here somewhere, I'll look for it as I'm explaining, but they took this massive amount of silver out of their vaults and they moved it to something called non-deliverable. I had never heard of that before, because there is eligible, which is in essence non-deliverable, and there's registered. What that means is COMEX, we have 8 COMEX facilities. I'll try to do this quick because I know we're getting tight on time. 8 COMEX facilities. One of them, Brinks, New York City, JFK, is a COMEX vault. My clients have 1,000-ounce bars there. Those are eligible. They are eligible to be sold on COMEX, but they're not for sale. They belong to my clients. Registered means, well, I moved it into the registered category. My bars that are eligible, they can now be sold. So normally eligible would mean, it's not for delivery, but they did something even bigger than that. They moved it into a different facility. So if I move my bars out of Brinks JFK, which are COMEX eligible, into Brinks Salt Lake City, and it's carried by Brinks truck, never leaves custody of Brinks, it's still left the COMEX ecosystem. It is no longer deliverable. It would have to be reintroduced and reassayed. That's in essence what they did. They're moving all of this metal out of the COMEX vaults completely. Now it's on their balance sheet, but it is now outside the ecosystem. Huge amounts.
Meaning they probably don't want to put it back in. That's what you're saying. You wouldn't go through that effort, right? It's
correct. Why would you ever do that?
Right.
And so that is exactly what is happening more than anything. As far as I'm concerned, if I were going to bet if it were true, What he's basically saying is what Luongo is saying is what I've been saying, that they have hoodwinked the European banks and said, you want to mess with us with election interference? He says it's them.
Yeah.
That's what Tom believes. You want to be behind the color revolution? Fine. Here's how we get you. We blow up your banks, and we do it through standing for delivery. And that's kind of what you could make a story with what I just told you. You could put that into AI and say, make it look where the banks blow up, and you would watch it. You would find something compelling.
Yeah. Fascinating times, Andy. Oh, man. You remember playing Risk when you were a kid? That board
Love
game?
that game. I love that. That was a great. That goes back to the 1970s, man. I was playing that game in elementary school.
I was playing that as a kid too. Andy, before we go here today, a lot of people are still looking for gold and silver. This is an old poster. I don't even know if you have any junk silver left.
We do, and we're selling. It's more. What does that say? How much?
I'm at $1 here on this one.
It's a little bit higher right now. We are offering it to another company at, I believe, $1.39 over spot, and we would do that for your people too while supplies last. I'll have to tell my staff that, but we would do it at $1.39 over spot for you. I think it's actually it's either $1.39 or $1.35 over spot.
I'll change the poster for the audience, guys. Check it out, beyondmystic.net/silver. Just fill it out there. Let Andy know what you want, and he'll get that delivered to you in short order. Last question on that here, too. There's a few people talking about, and I think Asian guy kind of suggested that this could still be a possibility. He went back to the gold confiscation, suggesting that if we move into this new territory here, that we might see some legislation like that around the world where there could be some confiscation, right, or both gold and silver. Now, in terms of the junk silver, would that be added in the same category as its legal tender and money in circulation? Do you have an extra?
Well, it should be. I mean, that should be safe from it because that's just dimes and quarters. Right. It's still legal tender. They never pulled that out of circulation. Like, for example, a $20 gold piece, 1930 or 28 St. Gaudens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gold, it's legal tender, but it was pulled out of circulation. So you could argue that that's not currency anymore. The dimes and quarters and $50, if you're stupid enough, you can spend them at the grocery store. It's still currency. And, that's the difference. The difference is what's legal tender is always legal tender. Once it's legal tender, it's always legal tender.
Yeah.
But once it's currency and no longer currency, it's still legal tender, but it's not currency.
Right. Last quick question before we go. Let me just bring up AppMex here. We're at 79 USD spot. We hit 82 something earlier today, just before a little bit of a pullback. If you were to guess here, do we cross this 82, 84 bucks that everybody's talking about here? Could be a trigger here that could create this vacuum very quickly to $100. Are we close to that here?
Yeah, we are, but the month of January is volatile. You had the Bloomberg commodity index that has to be rebalanced.
Well, okay, so very quickly, I think they were going from 9% to 3%. What does that mean exactly, Andy?
It means that if you have a fund that has bing, 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 bing in terms of assets, and one of them goes, bloop, all of a sudden becomes greatly outsizing the original allocation, they have to sell it to rebalance it to what it's supposed to be.
Right.
But when you do that, first of all, the selling of that begets more selling as the shorts, the longs have to puke it up. But who's standing on the other end? Thank you so much. That would be the Asians, and that would also be the banks and the U.S.
Well, you would think that the selling right now would be very welcome by some of these bigger institutions who are just standing for delivery. And if China is printing trillions of dollars and M2 money supplies, we're like, we'll
of course. And it's also the January effect on the other side of that, where just as some banks and funds have to rebalance their exposure or their equity percentages, their asset percentages to get within confines of their model.
Right.
There are others that have to now redeploy all of this cash within the first few weeks of January for their 2026 allocation. So just as it'll look like a heart rate monitor. As some are selling, there'll be others buying. Today is a good example, Jean-Claude. You take a look at it, they smashed the hell of it down to 77. It's back to 79 something right now. Yeah. But one other thing, one of the things that they often do is to raise margins, right? And so they raised margins twice in 2 weeks, the last one being the day after Thanksgiving by 30%, which means if you own a contract and you're using margin, like before this happened, you only needed $21,000 in your margin account. Well, the day after Christmas, they said, we're raising it by 30%. You need $27,000 in your margin account per contract. Well, if you have 40 contracts on margin, and now all of a sudden if you don't pay that money, well, we're going to liquidate your position. So they sell 12 contracts to come up with the money. That selling begets more selling because everyone's got the margin increase. And these traders who think they're so smart but don't have big enough money to do this, to play in this sandbox, they get squeezed and they get margin called. So they're forced to liquidate and fall right into the hands of the big players like Tesla, like Samsung, like the solar panel companies, like the state sovereign institutions, sovereign wealth funds, family offices, big money coming in and buying it. I'll say it to you this way. There are neighborhoods. I had lunch with the owner of a Major League Baseball team last week. He lives next door to Mark Wahlberg, the actor, and down the street is Alicia Keys. The houses in this neighborhood, right down the street from my country club, you would never know it, totally inconspicuous area, and these houses are $50 million. Do you think they care what mortgage rates are? Of course not. They come in and pay with cash. But if you're on margin or you're in a neighborhood where everyone takes out a mortgage, you raise the mortgage rates, it's going to affect the value. You raise the margin rate, it's going to squeeze the smaller traders. Falls right into the hands of the big money. So there's going to be volatility, but in the end, this repositioning, this squeezing, raising of the margins, it's not doing anything to the people that are standing for delivery for 18 million ounces of silver in the first 3 days. They don't care about margins. They have enough money to pay cash, stand for delivery, and as it gets squeezed lower, boom, it pops right back up. They'll buy more and stand for delivery on some more. We're trapped now. You can't continue to suppress when the physical demand is sitting right there to gobble it up. So yes, once we break through that level, I wouldn't be surprised to see 100 come very quickly within the first quarter of this year.
Music to my ears, Andy. Thank you so much for being on, guys.
It's always good to see you, JC.
Guys, if you want to hear more of that amazing insight, please follow Andy here. You can find his work on Miles Franklin Media here on YouTube, and of course, his website is milesfranklin.com. Andy, we'll see you again next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, Happy New Year, and good to see you back.
Stay well, JC.
All right, take care, man.
Bye-bye.